What's going on, guys? It's Nick here, back with another video. Biggest bust in every single round. Going round by round today and pointing out the one player in each round that is the most likely to bust. We're going to go across positions too, obviously not doing defense and kicker, but all the other positions, and we're going to assume half PPR scoring. Also, we are doing the consensus must-own players video that we did last season, again, sometime next week. So in the description of this video, and really any video until like Tuesday or so, put your favorite pick down there and keep in mind what it takes to get them. So these can be early round picks, middle, late picks, just whoever you really want to get on your team. And upvote people's comments if they have the same players as you so we can see kind of what the consensus is among you guys. So let's start things off with today's video with the stat of the day. Yesterday's stat was which tight end had the most receiving yards on third down. The answer was Mark Andrews. Today's stat, which quarterback with at least 100 third down pass attempts had the lowest passer rating on third down? All right, I want to make one thing clear about this video. You can still draft these players. Just because someone has a high chance of busting doesn't mean they're undraftable. It just means that there are a lot of paths to them disappointing. But sometimes you need a little upside on your team, and you should be targeting players that might bust, but could also have really nice seasons. So just want to make that extremely clear before we start. So first round, we have Dalvin Cook. This one is pretty clear to me. The top 4 running backs are extremely safe. Then Michael Thomas and Adams are going to crush, so you're not really left with that many options. Dalvin Cook, at least as of recording this, is still a risk of holding out, and he's yet to play a healthy season in his career. Had a torn ACL as a rookie, the major hamstring injury in year 2, he missed time last season with the shoulder injury, so there are a lot of different things that could go wrong with Cook. Obviously, the ceiling is massive, but among players in the first round, he has the clearest path to busting. In round 2, we have Aaron Jones. Not only is he in a 3 running back committee, but he's facing massive touchdown regression. He scored way more touchdowns than he should have on average, and the Packers as a team also ran for a far greater percentage of touchdowns than we should expect over time. The Packers had 41.2% rushing touchdown percentage last season, which is by far their most since at least 2003, but likely longer than that. I only have that stat since 2003, but over these last 17 seasons, they've never even come close to rushing for touchdowns at a higher rate than they did last season. And if that doesn't scream regression, then I don't know what does. So when you add in that they drafted A.J. Dillon, who's pretty clearly going to be used in some goal line situations, it just makes Jones an extremely risky pick in the second round. For the third round, we've got Leonard Fournette. My war against Fournette is not a secret at this point, but he's just the most likely to bust in this range. All the receivers are pretty safe. You've got Galladay, Cooper, Thielen, Moore, Robinson. Those guys all have a pretty low chance of busting. A lot of the running backs are going to see a lot of volume. Gurley, Gordon, Carson, they should see a boatload of touches. And then it's pretty unlikely that Mahomes or Lamar bust. So we're basically just left with Fournette, a guy who suffered a number of lower body injuries, both in college and the NFL. A player who, while he got a ton of targets last season, was very inefficient in the receiving game and will likely lose a lot of that work this season to Chris Thompson. So there are just a lot of paths to Fournette disappointing as a third round pick, especially when you consider all of the great players going around him in this range. Fourth round, Cooper Kupp. Kupp's path to busting is if the offense looks like it did to close last season, and I honestly think that's the most likely scenario. I think they're moving to a lot more 2 wide receiver sets, and that they want to try and run the ball more, especially out of sets that have 2 tight ends. And that's bad news for Kupp because he has to play in the slot. As per Matt Harmon in reception perception, Kupp has never finished above the 12th percentile in success rate versus man or press coverage at any point in his career. He needs to play in the slot. He's just got to do it. And we saw what happens when he doesn't last season. So if the Rams do what we think they will, and they run a lot more sets with Woods and Kupp on the outside, and then both Everett and Higbee at tight end, then Kupp is going to have some bad weeks, and also Woods is going to dominate. So if that happens, then Woods should absolutely be ranked higher than Kupp everywhere, and Kupp definitely has a chance to busting. 5th round, Devin Singletary. This one's easy. No way he should be going this early, but he still is. No matter what you think about Zach Moss, you have to realize that, one, there's at least a chance that Moss is better, but even if he isn't, he's gonna tank Singletary's upside. Singletary had 3 total carries inside the 10-yard line last season because they would pull Gore in when they got close, and Josh Allen would rush for touchdowns. Well, Allen is still going to rush for touchdowns, and while they don't have Gore, they said Moss is filling the Gore role. So that's just not enough touchdown upside when you consider all of the incredible options in this range, especially at wide receiver. There's just no reason to take Singletary. 6th round, Cam Akers. Want to point out one thing. McVay did not say that they're going to use a 4-man committee. His exact quote was this: if you look at the success San Francisco had last year, what they did with the running back by committee approach, what I thought Kyle Shanahan and their players did a great job of is this. Hey, we're going to have an open-minded approach. We're going to be committed to trying to have some balance, and then we're going to go with the hot hand, or whoever really expresses themselves as deserving of the carries. We've got 4 backs that we feel are all NFL legitimate starting caliber backs, and not feeling like we've got to force carries or touches to any of them. Just open-minded and see how these guys do. He's not saying that each of these guys is getting a fourth of the work, which I don't think is what anyone is trying to claim. But when you say there's a 4-man committee, that means that each of these 4 players has a role and they're all splitting the time. That's not what he's looking to do. He's saying we're going to go with the hot hand. Some weeks that'll be Akers, other times it'll be Henderson. He's not saying that John Kelly is going to have his weeks as the feature back. That's just not going to happen, right? He's basically saying no one's going to be the feature back week in and week out, although it's most likely still going to be Akers and Henderson getting the majority of the work. So I want to be clear on that. It still results in the same thing for Akers. This is way too high of an ADP where he's been going because we have no idea when these big weeks are going to come. I mean, how are you supposed to start him being like, I think this is the week that they're going to lean on Akers, right? If they're just going with the hot hand, it's going to be completely random. You're never going to absolutely know which one you should start, but at the very least, they should be going next to each other, right? If they're going with the hot hand, how is Akers going in the 6th round and Henderson going in like the 10th, 11th round? They should be going much closer, and neither should be going this early. This is just far too high. 7th round, AJ Green. Green could absolutely finish the season as a wide receiver 1, but you also need to realize that he hasn't been over 1,100 yards since 2015, and he hasn't played since 2018. Now, he should be fully healthy to start the season, and he will be 32 when the season starts. I feel like people think he's much older than that. 32 is not too old for a wide receiver, but you can't deny that he's got a high chance of busting. He has the new quarterback. He has more competition for targets. He hasn't played in well over a year, and when he has played recently, he has suffered a number of fairly major injuries. So definitely an upside pick, but a risky one for sure. And another player that fits the exact mold going around later is Will Fuller. Another easy decision. He enters year 5 of his career having busted in years 1 through 4. I mean, no matter how you look at it, he has busted in every single season. He's shown an incredible ceiling, but also an incredibly low floor, and has suffered a number of major injuries. I do think that he can be a good pick this season. And if you love your team going into this round and you say, I just want the highest upside pick, it is probably Will Fuller, and I'm totally comfortable doing that. Just understand that injuries have been a theme over his career, and he has also shown, while he can have, 14 for 217 and 3, I believe is what he had in a game last season. Even when he is healthy, he has had plenty of games where he completely does. So don't be shocked if he doesn't just go off this season, but also don't be shocked if he does go off this season, because he has literally top 10 wide receiver upside. Ninth round, Sony Michel. Michel has seen 209 and 247 carries in each of his first 2 seasons, yet has still been just the running back 31 and 36 in points per game. He has absolutely no ceiling since they refuse to use him in the receiving game, so if anyone at all threatens his early down role, he's going to bust. And we have to assume that Damian Harris is going to play more than 5 snaps this season. For the 10th round, I got it down to John Brown and Jeury, but I couldn't make a decision, so I'm just going to mention both of them here since it's for the exact same reasons. Both of these guys have massive volume concerns. The Bills have the fewest vacated targets in the league and just added a true alpha wide receiver. So while it'll boost the overall offense, they still have Josh Allen at quarterback. And while he's great in fantasy, he can't support 2 fantasy relevant wide receivers. So Brown isn't going to be usable while Diggs is healthy. And then if you look at Jeury, we know that he's going to be a stud at some point in his career. But to expect production in year 1 is asking a lot. Sutton's still the guy. Fant should take a step forward. They're going to use their running backs a lot. So unless you think Locke is just going off this season, Jeury still needs to overtake Sutton to be relevant, and I do not see that happening in his rookie season. Maybe at some point, but not this year. Round 11, Baker Mayfield. The risk with Baker is that the Browns switch to a more run-heavy approach. They now have Chubb and Hunt for the whole season, and they've upgraded their offensive line probably more than any other team did, and they should be ranked inside the top 10 now. Plus, they have the 3rd easiest schedule in the league, so they may be ahead more late in games, and that should lead to more run-heavy second halves. So while I expect his interception numbers to go down, his overall connection with Odell to improve, he still doesn't run the ball, and I think that as a team, they're going to lean on Chubb and Hunt a lot more this season, and that could lead to far fewer pass attempts and to him overall busting at this ADP. 12th round, Mecole Hardman. I've seen a ton of hype surrounding Hardman, and I get the inclination to like a player like this. He's got incredible upside. He's a deep threat tethered to Patrick Mahomes, but the only change from last season has been that they've added Clyde Edwards-Helaire, right? I mean, Kelsey Hill-Watkins are still there. So where do people think these extra targets are coming from? I shared a stat in a recent video, but it's a pretty big one. It's important to remember. When Tyreek Hill returned in week 6 on through the Super Bowl, Hardman had 24 targets in 14 weeks, which is 1.7 per week. So unless you think they re-signed Watkins to an extension, or I guess signed him to an extension so that they could bench him for Hardman, you must be projecting either Kelsey or Hill to get hurt. And I don't understand where this massive increase in targets is coming from if you're not doing that. So I don't see really how you could draft him at all outside of a very deep league. Final round we're going to go over today is the 13th. Basically, everyone beyond this range is at a high chance of busting. I mean, you're going to be in the 14th round after this. You're only looking for upside anyway, so even going over those players won't be overly helpful. But in the 13th, we have Kirk Cousins, and this one should make a lot of sense. He's not going to get you any rushing yards, and he just lost Diggs. So unless Jefferson has a fantastic rookie season, there's really no weekly upside with Kirk. And even with Diggs last season, he only went over 300 passing yards 4 times, which I guess is okay, but he's going to have a lower ceiling than even that, so he might only go over 300 twice this season. And last season, he threw less than 30 pass attempts per game, and they still want to run the football. So getting this downgraded receiver makes it pretty clear that he doesn't have that same sort of weekly ceiling we used to see in Washington And I don't know. I don't see him as anything other than a streaming option. And it's just not a great pick at this point when he doesn't have any sort of rushing and his skill players aren't as good as they've been in recent years. So those are the biggest busts in every round, but that doesn't necessarily mean you can't draft all of them. So if you want to see a full list of players I'm targeting and avoiding, you can check that out at our website, thefantasyfootballadvice.com. That's the end of this one. Hope you all did enjoy. If you did, how about hitting that like button? And how about subscribing to the channel if you're new? Thanks for watching.